You are listening to the We Are West Ham podcast, Opposition View, with me, Will Pugh. And this week, joining us to look ahead to West Ham's game with Manchester City at London Stadium on Saturday is big-time friend of the podcast, Ste Tudor from the 9320 podcast. Steve, great to have you back on the show again. The feedback we always get from our conversations is, it's all quite heartwarming and lovely, and there's a friendship between West Ham and Man City and their fans. We reflect that on the podcast and usually on Twitter a bit as well. It's all quite nice. And then you stuff us 4-1. So I've been racking my brains beforehand thinking, right, how can I make it a bit different this time around? Not because I don't like talking to you in such heartwarming fashion, of course, but more because I think, well, maybe if I approach the podcast and the chat with Steve differently, maybe that would lead to a different outcome in the game. West Ham's home record against Manchester City. Jonesy said it on the podcast earlier in the week, is 9 games at London Stadium. I believe we've conceded 27 goals, an average of 3 per game, and scored just 4. It's not a great record. We haven't beaten you at home in the league since 2014. You always go, oh yeah, but I'm nervous, mate. West Ham. I'm basically doing the pod without speaking to you at all. So I'm trying to go for something different, but I'm pretty sure it's just going to be the same again. So crack on and tell me you're nervous, because people like it anyway.
Well, to be fair, in this instance, this is your joint best start to a Premier League season. You're unbeaten. You're playing well. Your new signings are bedded in immediately. It's all looking good. So, and it's after an international break where things are a little bit, anything can happen. So in this instance, I think it's fair for me to say I've got every right to be a bit nervous.
It's a title decider, is it not, so early?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you can go top if you win at the weekend. You go top, or there's a chance. So, yeah, absolutely. It's a weird season because Chelsea are obviously out of it and in a rebuilding phase. United are looking woeful. Liverpool are looking good. Spurs are looking good. You guys are looking good. Arsenal are looking good. Any one of you can kind of challenge it this year, because I do expect City to be up there. But it's really hard to predict this year. I've got to say, it could be one of 3 or 4 teams come the spring in contention.
Do you feel, Steve? I know. Look, I'll tell you what. Actually, I'll put it to you. Maybe you obviously do your own podcast, and you do lots of opposition views, no doubt. That you're just as generous with other podcasts as you are with ours with your time. But is it difficult for you, on the podcast every week? How do you sort of, generate because obviously it's a bit easier with West Ham, because if we win, we can just be delightedly happy about it. Right. And then if we lose, do you know what I mean? It's easier to sort of create the content and produce some original thought and that sort of thing. Yeah. Obviously, it sways into chat about the manager, but you've got the planet's best manager. You win most weeks, and even when you don't, you're still like doing all right at the top of the league. You're winning everything. You won the treble since we last spoke. Are you just looking at finer details each and every week, or are you just finding reasons to be nervous because you've had it ingrained in you since you were young?
No, it's a really good point. Now you do kind of try and look at the finer details. You look at the players who are kind of coming into form, and the players who are slipping out of form, maybe a bit overcritical considering the football that was served up. That's absolutely true if you look at the negatives. So one defeat for you guys, you may look at the positives and think, okay, well, on to the next game, whatever it may be. With City, it's an apocalypse. If we win, then suddenly, on Twitter, it's all doom and gloom. Pep out is the joke. So yeah, everything's kind of heightened in that regard. And it is, I've got to admit, there are times where if City are going through a bit of a bad period, then it makes for a change, to be honest. And it's a different kind of conversation that can be had, different kind of analysis, and it mixes things up. Last season with a treble and obviously fighting on all those fronts and succeeding on those fronts. I mean, in the Champions League, the way that we battered Bayern and Real and all the rest of it, that was just a charge, an electric charge. That was a rush. You go on the podcast and you would enjoy it. This season, I've noticed now, I mean, when we beat Fulham 5-1, that wasn't a 5-1 win. You know, we struggled.
No. Yeah.
And so you feel almost flat after beating a team 5-1.
Yeah.
And it's not because
Yeah.
we're spoiled. We have got an inherent kind of fear of becoming like United City fans. We do not want to become anything like United fans with their arrogance and their entitlement. It's hard to bloody not feel that way sometimes, I've got to say, because it's consistently, you win games. So it is difficult, but it's first world problems, mate. I'm not complaining.
No, of course. No, I genuinely, and I really appreciate your honesty, to be honest, because it's a really intriguing one. Because, like I say, it must be difficult, especially as you do the pod as well, and, you know, no doubt with your mates and that sort of thing. It must be quite difficult when you've got Nottingham Forest at home on the weekend to find any jeopardy in it, because we play Nottingham Forest and we genuinely. Jonesy, obviously, you know Jonesy well, and he loves the old wouldn't it be classic West Ham to do this and this, and I know lots of teams fans do that, but when we play Nottingham Forest at home or Bournemouth, it's not a given that we're going to win. So, you know, we will sort of talk it through, and you still do have to look at, where are they dangerous? Where could they hit us? And all right, we should win. But it's like a 65-35, 60-40 in our favour. Yeah. I'm just intrigued, and I do appreciate you being honest about it, really, because it must be a completely different experience, your football supporting experience, than mine. Because for what, I don't know, 70%, is that fair to say, of your games in a season, it's almost like, well, yeah, it'd have to be a pretty catastrophic day for us not to win it.
Yeah, it comes down to false modesty, and maybe I've been guilty of that on this pod in the past. I genuinely mean it this time. I really do. You guys are looking good, and so it is going to be a tough game. But maybe I've been guilty of kind of false modesty. But having said that, I've got nothing to be modest about, false or otherwise, because you know, Shakeman Sir could have bought West Ham, and then it would have been entirely flipped. The conversation we're having now. So
not your fault,
I've done
is
nothing.
it?
Exactly. I've it's purely a lotto win. And so can't take any credit for it. So that's an awkward one as well, where, I mean, you can look at it from the other side as well, the flack that City fans get on Twitter, and you think, well, I'm not a billionaire. I'm not particularly rich.
No.
So it's like the fans kind of represent the club, and, you know, come on podcasts and represent the club. But ultimately, it's kind of, you know, it's all out of our control, and it comes down to pure dumb luck. That's all it is.
Yeah, totally. I totally get it, and I'll have said this to you, no doubt, before. That's why I have such a really strong affinity to Manchester City fans and Chelsea fans in particular. People always scowl at me as a West Ham fan when I say, I wouldn't quite go as far as to call it a soft spot, because I love it when we beat them. But I've got no problem with Chelsea. They're probably my least hated sort of London club or whatever.
Oh, really?
And the reason for that is because all the people who are my age, 31, when we were growing up, Chelsea were only slightly less rubbish than West Ham were. You know, they had some amazing flair players, and they were slightly better, you know what I mean, where we were finishing sort of 12th to 15th every year. They were perhaps, you know, they would flirt with the European places and have a couple of flash in the pan seasons. A couple of years I remember them finishing like 10th, 11th, 12th, sort of fairly par for the course. And you always felt you had a decent chance of getting a result against them. So all the fans of my age, who, especially the ones who used to go, because I've got more of an affinity with match-going fans, I find, the ones who used to go, they spent just as much time and money as I did going to watch a pretty average team. Yeah. And then it just so happened Abramovich came along. What are they going to do? Go, oh, no, well, I don't like Chelsea anymore. I'm going to support someone else. And it's the same with City. I think they're real fans normally from, you know, all the City fans are normally from Manchester. Chelsea fans, to be fair, are spread out a little bit further than West London. But I really haven't got an issue with it at all. And I'm just interested to hear like what it's like, because at least we can find most games we go into are thinking this will be a good game because it's going to be tight, and I don't guess you get that. But look, talk about the treble then, Steve. Talk me through that, the feelings. You've been honest already so far. inevitably it's going to get compared to Manchester United's one. How was the whole experience for you? How did you find it? How do you feel about it then and now?
If you break them down individually, all three would, if they'd happened just on their own, would have been incredible. I mean, the manner in which we kind of hold it back against Arsenal, and just kind of referring back to what we were just talking about, it's the establishment clubs, isn't it? And the entitlement of the fans of the establishment clubs. And I think I spoke about this last time with you, a real eye-opener last season, for what Arsenal fans are like online. I mean, I've watched them from a distance and just laughed at them and seen the TV channels and all the rest of it. But when you're actually in a title race with them, it's like, wow, they are unbelievable. So Arsenal and United,
hands down, the weirdest fans,
just absolutely weird. I mean, really, yeah. And so to beat them was immensely satisfying. In the FA Cup final, obviously Manchester United. I mean, when I was a kid, waiting to go to college on the bus, I used to just daydream about City being in an FA Cup final with United. It just seems so ludicrous to be in an FA Cup final and to play United. And there it was, and we scored after 14 seconds. And then the Champions League final, part of it, of course, was just to shut up that narrative, just to do it. So a bit of relief there, but that was kind of the feeling going into the final. But then, of course, you've got the final to enjoy and celebrate, and that was just incredible. Just surrounded by family. All of us grew up as Blues. Even the mum has got no interest in football, but both her sons are City fans. It was a special night. It really was.
Yeah, it's amazing. And how does it feel now? Because when it's sort of, I appreciate you can do the quadruple. So you know what I mean? It's almost like, and to be fair to Pep and the players, you look right at it again, and Pep doesn't seem to have, his sort of desire doesn't seem to have diminished from where I'm stood or whatever. How does it feel as a fan, and what do you make of the team and their sort of ability and your own ability to sort of get up and go again? Is there what do we do from here? Or
I think it's very different between the players and the fans. I've noticed from the fan base, there's, apathy is the wrong word, but there's certainly kind of, an anticlimax to it all now. With a podcast and kind of listeners and interaction we're getting from fans, far less than what we had last season. And it needs to build up again, I guess. It's, a bit more drama and, getting to Christmas and all the rest of it. Right now, it's hard to pick ourselves up again and feel that excitement again. The players... Kyle Walker had a kind of a rousing speech with his teammates in pre-season where he said, look, we can't afford to just drop off again and then do these stages comebacks, which is what we've done against Liverpool twice and Arsenal. Let's just try and basically stamp our mark like we did in 17-18 and lead from the front. And of course, you can't choose to do that. Every team tries to win every football match. But it was intriguing that he said that. And we have started brighter than we have in previous seasons. So maybe the team are really riled up and motivated to just, lead from the front for once. Which, let's see if that continues at the weekend.
Yeah, well, talk to me then, Steve, about, you mentioned Kyle Walker there. He nearly left for Bayern Munich. He's admitted that himself. You have had some players depart. Riyad Mahrez, absolute legend, one of my favourite Premier League players of all time. He's gone. You'll have to remind me of a few of your other departures. But there is
Gundogan is the big one. Ilkay Gundogan is the big. I mean, we've brought in Kovacic, and what Chelsea were doing, letting him go, is beyond me.
I've always thought he was outstanding, so underrated. I thought that was an amazing signing. Yeah,
and I was saying, okay, it's kind of, it sounds so disrespectful to him, but I was seeing him as a bit of a downgrade on Gundo, which is pretty much based on how much I loved Gundogan, to be honest. But oh my God, I rated him at Chelsea, but this is he is really, from the off, he's putting in 8, 9 out of 10 performances every week. So and looking so kind of classy with the ball as well. So he's been a big sign-in, but Gundo was a big loss to us. We did not want him to go, and he's been so important to us in recent years.
He's obviously gone to Barcelona. It's a bit of an odd one. That, do you think there's an element of that, perhaps with Mahrez as well, of the what else do I do here? It's sort of a nice
yeah.
time to end the chapter. Laporte as well. Laporte went.
Laporte is
who
the
else did
oddest
you
one
lose?
of a lot, because Laporte's gone to Saudi Arabia, but no
Yeah,
Premier
of
League
course.
clubs came in. Apparently, Aston Villa and Spurs were interested. Just a phenomenally good defender.
Yeah.
We've got Gavardiol, who is, you know, the next big thing.
Hmm.
So Laporte had to go, but why another Premier League club didn't come in for him? I mean, at the price that he went for as well is beyond me, because
What
Laporte
did he go for?
is about 35 million, I think, 30 million
Yeah.
in the end. And today's
Madness.
prices, you know, yeah, a phenomenally good defender. So again, a big loss. So
Well, you can't not talk about Erling Haaland. You mentioned that Fulham game, really funny. You know, 5-1, you won the game. He gets a hat trick and an assist, I think it was, and it really felt, the feeling seemed to be that City didn't really get out of second or third
no,
gear, or just didn't play particularly well, but still demolished teams. Haaland just gives you that extra dimension, and that was the difference last season, really, wasn't it?
yeah, and he scored 3 and 2, wasn't he, against you guys last year? It was debut, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Last
the
season.
first game, wasn't it, at London
Yeah.
Stadium?
Do you know about the comparison with last season and how he started? Have you read that?
No, hit me.
It's mad. So last season he scored twice in the first game. This season he's done the same. Second game he didn't score. Second game this season he hasn't scored. Then he scored 2. Then he scored once, and then he got a hat trick. Exactly the same this season. Last season, yeah, I'm afraid last season he scored a hat trick in his next game as well. So it's not gonna, it can't carry on. But it is a bit mad. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a strange stat, especially 4 games in as well. Yeah. What you know, with City fans like travelling up and down the country again and go to the games with what. It seems a bit of an odd thing to say, because football does just carry on, right? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, West Ham won a European trophy last year, and you sort of think, well, how does it get better than this? And it's almost like when David Moyes is going, yeah, well, you know, got to focus on the season now. And I'm like, no, I just want to pause time forever, and that'd be it. And there'll be no more football anymore. So I sort of, obviously not to the same extent with the treble and all that. But what do you see for City in the next, I don't know, a bit more longer term, perhaps? Because I can't see beyond you winning the title again this season. I will continue to be pleased and happy that City do it ahead of all the establishment clubs, as you called them there. If it's not West Ham, let it be City, has always been my motto. And yeah, what do you see beyond as a fan? What does the midterm look like? Pep Guardiola still doesn't seem like he's going anywhere. Yeah, it's almost just like it carries on until it doesn't.
Yeah,
you know I mean?
He said this week, or it's kind of emerged this week, that he has no intention of going until the 115 charges are dealt with, and kind of, you know, however kind of the judgment falls on that. So let's hope that investigation carries on for a long, long time. Because as long as he's at the club, then yeah, I just feel like I can trust my football team, which is, I've never had that until, you know, 5 or 6 years ago. As regards to this season, the Champions League, you just never know. And we've learned that the hard way. You know, you can go into a first leg and a knockout deep in a tournament, you know, 3-1 up and think it's up, you're home and dry. You're not in that competition. The league, I've got to say, and I don't say this often, I do really fancy us for the league, to the extent where I would be surprised if we don't win the league, which sounds horrendous, but and of course, for knockouts in the domestic trophies, again, you just never know. We've got form for playing weakened sides when we get to like the semis, for example, of the FA Cup. Last season we played Sheffield United, so we got through that. The League Cup is what I want, mate. The League Cup was ours.
Mate, I know.
It was ours. We won it every year.
Trophy.
Yes. I want that back.
We ruined that, didn't we?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, we ruined it. Yeah, well, that's the only thing I take. Yeah, I don't blame you, mate. Sort of, I think you've won the League Cup more in the last few seasons than West Ham have won their own pre-season tournament, which is just one-off friendly.
I would, and I'm not just saying this. You know, I mean this. I would love it if you won a cup this year. I was so tough for you last season, but to an FA Cup would be amazing.
Yeah, no, I quite agree. I'm loving it at West Ham at the moment. The main thing I get annoyed with is other negativity. I'm like, all right, it wasn't great in the league last season, but it wasn't a disaster. Like, we're in Europe still. Like, do you remember watching West Ham under Sam Allardyce and Avram Grant? Like, this is our third season in Europe. In Europe, like, what? Can everyone just chill out? But then, those people on Twitter and whatever, those videos with nuance and calm don't get quite as many likes and reactions as mindless idiots shouting rubbish, do they? So, well, look, let's talk about the game, Steve. I've put it off, for as long as possible. Now, I would say this conversation has been slightly different to ones we've had in the past. That record you've brought up about Haaland, that doesn't give me much hope. But the one thing I will say is, having looked at your stats from last season, you lost 5 and drew 5. So, which makes it that you dropped points about 1 in every 4 to 5 games.
Right.
You've won all 4 of your games so far this season. So the 5th game is the one you drop points in. So that's what I'm clinging on to for dear life. Also, that defeat, albeit on penalties, in the Carabao Cup. But you just love coming to London Stadium, don't you? And I was explaining to Jonesy that I had to pick one of the games this month when I was sorting out my work shifts. And I picked this one to miss. I went last season.
Right.
Because I just don't give us. It's one of few where I completely write it off. I genuinely look forward to the game at the Etihad more because we seem to weirdly do slightly better there. But we just seem to get humped at London Stadium. What is it?
I don't know what it is, because one aspect of football, which is always I've never got to the bottom of, is why some pitches just feel bigger and look bigger. Because by law. Yeah, but we're only talking about a few centimeters because, by law it has to be, and yet it feels so vast and big, West Ham. And I think that just plays to our strengths and a kind of a passing game and all the rest of it. So maybe it's that, but maybe I'm not simplifying it there. I don't know. And one thing I want to ask you about, Zuma looks really good this season. Is he in really good form, Kurt Zuma?
He is. He's basically just looked permanently semi-injured since he did actually hurt his knee quite badly at West Ham. He's always seems to be limping around and half fit. But Moisey's given him the captain's armband for the first few games. He hasn't left the cat kicking thing behind him completely, but obviously that cast a cloud over him, was a big distraction. And he does look good. Now, Aguerd's a class act. To be honest, Steve, I think we let Declan Rice go at just the right time. David Moyes now, he hasn't got a big superstar in the team that he's got to contend with. He's got 11 really solid, excellent professionals. He's brought excellently, albeit the signings were too late. But we have the Betway charity bets on the podcast every week for me and Jones. We raise some money for a couple of excellent charities, Bobby Moore Fund and the DT38 Foundation. And this week, my bet does include Kurt Zuma to score over 3.5 goals and a penalty to be awarded. Was my 3-legger this week. And I just
always seems to be a penalty. I don't know why. Maybe I'm wrong there, but it always seems to be a penalty at West Ham. Yeah,
exactly. Haaland got one last season, didn't he? But Zuma looks in fine fettle. There was all the talk about Maguire, and obviously Angelo Ogbonna is the backup now. Naif Aguerd is excellent alongside him. And it just seems to be a really good fit at West Ham, Zuma. He improved us straight away. And that's what we needed this summer, was signings that are going to improve the starting 11. And with Edson Alvarez, James Ward-Prowse and Mohamed Kudus, who by all accounts is a class act, I think we've done that. And and that's a good thing. But no, Zuma, he does look good. He just he's quick and he reads a game really well. But whenever he's made a vital interception or something, he then looks like he's limping about and that his knees are going to fall out or his hamstring just snapped or whatever. But a class act. But what do you expect from Haaland then? Before I sort of get a score prediction off of you, and what do you expect from Haaland long term? Do you is he destined for Real Madrid? Is he just almost one of them players who seems to be too good for any team on the planet?
Yeah, I mean, he loves it at City, and I can see him staying for a good 2-3 years. But when it gets to the end of his contract, then inevitably all the talk's going to start, and it'll just be constant and daily. I don't know. I can see him ending up at
Recent
Real Madrid
reports
at some
about him
point.
signing a new deal, Steve. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, it could well be. He genuinely is happy in Manchester. He loves living there. He loves the club. He's well looked after. He's scoring tons of goals. He's got a connection with the fans. He's a City fan from childhood. So all of that's positives. So I can't see it happening anytime soon. But when you look back on his career, when it's all done and dusted, you'd expect Real Madrid to be in there at some point. I can't see him staying, for the whole duration of his career. But, I can see it being 3, 4, 5 years down the line. Can I just very quickly tell you a Bobby Moore story? That only happened to me. Happened a couple of weeks ago. So I did a social media for a sporting brand, a sporting clothing brand, sorry. And I found this great photo of Bobby Moore in America with this really cool kit. And I just put it up on Facebook one day. And his daughter got in touch and replied.
Really?
And and it was a really... Yes, and it was a really sweet story as well. It was apparently the club, was it Lauderdale he played for, I think? Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
Yes, and it was their tradition at the start of every game for the players to take out a bunch of flowers and hand it to someone in the crowd. And he always used to give, this is what his daughter told me, he always used to look out for where his daughter was and handed her flowers before every game.
Right.
And oh my God, I was like starstruck. I know it's, daughter, but still, it's Bobby Moore. Of course. It was so sweet as well, and I was chuffed with that. That was like, in the first thing in the morning, you check your kind of Facebook notifications. It was like, oh my God! So that's nice. Anyway.
Oh, amazing! Yeah, he played for the San Antonio Thunder, the Seattle Sounders, and Carolina Lightning. It was
the last one. It was the last one. Yes, yeah. Because they had it's a weird tradition to carry flowers.
Yeah, 8 games in 1983 that was, but amazing story. No, she does a lot more with the club now. Yeah, and obviously Stephanie is his his former partner, wife, who does the runs the Bobby Moore Fund, which is a fantastic charity. So we love being involved with them as well. But no, I like that tale, mate. Right, coming in. How's the game going to go style wise? And then I'll get a score prediction off of you.
Style wise, I could see us bossing most of the possession. It's Alvarez is a really interesting one for us. He's kind of City fans are divided on him. No one's doubting his quality, but where he's playing right now is almost like a playmaker. His stats are phenomenal, but the rest of the time, the ball seems to bounce off him a little bit. He's going to be key. If he plays well, I think we win. Score prediction. Okay, we're trying to do it different this time, aren't we? So I will go for a City win this time. I'll go for 3-1 City.
3-1 to City. Fair enough. Yeah, look, you never know, do you? All these we're sort of trading. Your thing about your stat about Haaland, that actually I think trumps my one about. You're having drop points one game in every 5 last season. I think you might have the upper hand in the voodoo stakes with me on that one. But how do you we're obviously a counter-attacking side. We're more than happy to let teams have all of the ball. In fact, it's where Moyes most comfortable. I don't know if from what you've seen so far this season you can tell, but is that the sort of if any team are going to give you the most trouble? What sort of games are City going to find the most difficult? Is it those, or I can't see when you come up against Ange Postecoglou, who's just trying to do a B-Tech version of what City do, that you're going to have any problems smashing them off the park?
No, I've got to admit, I do love it when we play kind of attacking sides. Pep loves it as well. Pep is so condescending afterwards. If we beat Brighton, he'll say, "Oh, Brighton are the best team in the world," and De Zerbi's the greatest manager because he loves it. They just play it to his hands. Yeah. So of course, playing a counter-attacking team, particularly a well-organised, counter-attacking team as you guys are, then that's always the trickiest side. If the atmosphere is good there, which it will be, then, if you guys go ahead, I will be seriously worried. I can't see us getting back into it. I can see you holding on to a lead, but I fancy us to score first. We do tend to score early as well. So I think last season, you guys, it was a sickness book, wasn't there, when you came to the Etihad? And you were without 3 or 4. Like Rice wasn't playing. But you guys did so well for first half. I can see that happening again. I can see a bit of a kind of stubbornness. First half 0-0, and then just all the goals second half.
Yeah, I must admit, when I was doing my charity bet, because I want to actually win some money for those charities, I never, but if I think West Ham are going to lose, I just do over 3.5 goals. I never say West Ham to lose.
Yes.
But I do fancy 3-1 to City. I think if we're going to score at all, it's going to come from a set piece. James Ward-Prowse has looked phenomenal from dead ball since he's come in, which is why I've gone for Zuma. So we have got the aerial threat, but people forget how good City are at defending and attacking set pieces as well. They assume you're just this ticky-tack side, but you're so good at all of the parts of the game. Are you vulnerable from set pieces? You think we got half a chance?
No, we used to be. And actually, both ends, we were terrible at corners. It was a huge flaw of ours. We just never scored. And I think there's some ridiculous stat ones where we didn't score for 4 seasons or something from a corner. That has all changed now. We've got set piece specialists come in, and the same goes for defending corners and set pieces. We are decent now, and there's plenty of height in there as well from the defenders. But then again, you guys got plenty of height too. So let's see where the cookie crumbles on that one.
Yeah, fair enough, mate. Fair enough. Well, look, I've kept you for a while anyway. I'm probably going to go 3-1 City as well, to be fair. I'm making a habit of doing that. Just one thing quickly, it would be remiss of me not to ask you. The Lucas Paqueta situation, we obviously don't have to go into why that situation's come about, but there was, Man City put a bid in for him. There was also reports recently saying you're in for looking at Naya for Gued as well. What did you make of for the Paqueta one mostly, but what do you / would you make of those sort of transfers if they were to happen?
I mean, again, how's this kind of fitness issues? It always seems to be there always seems to be injuries here and there. Is that the case?
Paqueta, you mean?
No, Agad.
Oh, Aguerd, he had an injury early doors.
Was it just the one? Okay.
Then, he's been pretty consistent since then. Yeah, on the whole, he's been pretty good.
Paqueta, I just hugely raised and I really wanted him. And then the price just got so silly. And it's not my money. And normally I don't really care. It's get the player in and leave it to the guys in charge at City because they know what they're doing. And if they think a player's worth that money, then so be it. But even I was thinking, this is getting a bit, steep now. And then it transpired, of course, we didn't get him. But in terms of the player he is and what he would have given City, some City fans were saying, he's a bit hit and miss. He could be a bit anonymous for 70 minutes and all that. No, he's just got all the technique in the world. I love watching him. And ultimately as well, it doesn't matter if you're top of the league or bottom of the league. That's why we go to games for, isn't it? To see players like that. And so, I did really want him, I have to admit.
Yeah, fair play. He's an absolute Rolls Royce player. He's got that £85 million release clause in his contract next summer. And I honestly think if he has another season playing to his potential, that'll look a bargain next summer. Honestly, he's a Rolls Royce footballer. Aguerd, I'd be disappointed if he went. But again, another one of our better players. Listen, Steve, it's been absolutely brilliant having you on, as it always is. We really appreciate you giving us so much of your time on the We Are West Ham podcast. West Ham v Man City at London Stadium, 3:00 on Saturday afternoon. Ste Tudor there from the 9320 podcast. This has been the Opposition View with me, Will Pugh, on the We Are West Ham podcast for another week. City at home on Saturday. Jonesy and I will be back with the normal pod at the beginning of next week. We'll have a couple of Opposition Views to bring you what with the cup games coming up as well. Busy time coming up. Thanks to Steve. Thanks to all of you lot for listening. Up the Hammers, West Ham are massive. We'll speak to you next week.